God is great always. Take a seat. Let's talk Tyson Fury being a star. And let's also talk Undisputed in the 4-belt era. Now, Tyson Fury sold out Wembley Stadium in less than 3 hours. That highlights how much of a star he is internationally in boxing. Not only is he selling pay-per-views here in the States, but he can go back home, sell out a soccer stadium without a strong B-side, without a B-side that, nothing against Dillian White, but not doing much to promote the fight. So Tyson Fury has proven that on his own, he's a star in boxing. But I couldn't help but think in seeing this, and seeing him do 85,000 in less than 3 hours for Dillian White, how big a Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk or Anthony Joshua for all the belts would have been in boxing. The frustrating thing about boxing politics is it gets in the way. It puts multiple roadblocks, several roadblocks, countless roadblocks in the way of us getting real champions in these divisions, undisputed champions. And not only that, on top of that, it makes it unsustainable for these fighters, once they achieve that greatness, once they achieve becoming undisputed and having all the belts in the division, they make it unsustainable for these fighters to simultaneously defend these belts. And more on that in a minute. But let's first talk about Tyson Fury. He seems disinterested at this point, to me, in becoming undisputed. It's almost a thing as if it happens, it happens. I think he's content on being the lineal champion. And that's probably a lot due to boxing politics. But he's out there saying he's going to retire after this fight, which we take that with a grain of salt, being that he could be using it for leverage for future fights. For me, I think it's already written in stone that he's going to fight once in 2022. When you see what's going on with Usyk and Ukraine right now, and the Anthony Joshua versus Usyk fight's not going to happen anytime soon. Joshua will probably take a fight before the Usyk rematch at this point. I just think I don't see Fury fighting again, at least in 2022, hopefully in 2023 for Undisputed. Now, when it comes to Undisputed, how important is it at this point? Not how important is it, but where do we stand with Undisputed? Because we've only had 2 guys in the 4-belt era successfully defend all 4 belts in a fight. That's Alexander Usyk against Tony Bellew in 2018, before he dropped all his belts to move to heavyweight, and then Josh Taylor this past weekend against Jack Catterall. Nobody else has done it. And the reason that nobody else has done it is because, as Josh Taylor highlighted this past weekend, one of the big roadblocks to that is sanctioning fees. Josh Taylor said he paid 11% of his purse on sanctioning fees. So what guy is going to continue to pay? You know, he's got to pay his manager, he's got to pay his promoter, he's got to pay his cut guy, he's got to pay his trainer, he's got to pay taxes, both local and federal if you're fighting in the States, state taxes, and you got to pay sanctioning fees on top of that. So what fighter is going to be able to pay these sanctioning fees and keep all 4 of these belts fight after fight after fight? It's just unsustainable. No fighter is going to do that. So these sanctioning bodies not only get in the way of undisputed fights, not only sanctioning bodies, but boxing politics as a whole gets in the way of undisputed fights happening in general. When it comes to Tyson Fury in the heavyweight division right now, we haven't had a heavyweight undisputed champion since Lennox Lewis in 2001. One of the reasons for that is the boxing politics gets in the way. We should have had the undisputed champ by now. When it comes to Fury, Joshua, Usyk, Deontay Wilder, these guys should have figured this out, but the politics gets in the way, and it does that through mandatory clauses, through rematch clauses. Rematch clauses have been a big detriment into us getting more meaningful fights, and we're getting rematches of fights that we shouldn't need rematches for. Usyk versus Joshua is one example of that. But once we get an undisputed champion in boxing, no matter what the division is, These guys have to go through major roadblocks and able to simultaneously defend all 4 of these belts at one time, and it becomes unsustainable. So it leads me to my question. Can we even blame Tyson Fury for being disinterested in becoming the undisputed heavyweight champion? And how important is it if you already have the lineal champion and you're already seen as the guy in your division? Should you jump through these hoops in order to get these fights? In order to get all the belts? Or should you just fight whoever is available to you with boxing politics aside? It's just frustrating to see this whole undisputed thing not be able to happen because of the boxing politics. And then once it happens, these guys aren't able to simultaneously defend these belts, so they have to drop one or multiple belts. And then we go through the whole process in the division once again, which leads a lot of guys to vacate that division as a whole and move up. Josh Taylor's about to move up to 147. Terrence Crawford moved up to 147. Canelo's moving up from 168 to 175. Usyk moved up from cruiserweight to heavyweight. Once you've conquered that division and you can't defend all your belts at once, what else is there left to do at the division? So that's where I stand with it. Tyson Fury versus Dillian Whyte will be a big fight, but I can't help but think, had boxing politics not gotten away, how big would a Fury versus Usyk been? Peace. God bless.